Welcome to Plots and Politics. My name is Corinne Straight, back with part 3 of Corruption and Cover-Up, a deep dive into the chronic sexual abuse and lack of accountability in the administration of Indianapolis Mayor Joe Hogsett. If you missed parts 1 and 2, please go check those out first. They are available on YouTube and Substack. Then come back for part 3. In part 3, we are going behind the scenes of 2 recent explosive Indianapolis City County Council meetings to hear from the people who were there. My guests, Lauren Roberts, Elise Schrock, and Morgan Mickelson, feel so as well. A couple of weeks later, or a week and a half-ish later, June 9th, a city council meeting comes around where they are now needing to consider the additional appropriation of $300,000 to finish paying the Fisher Phillips bill, because they'd only appropriated $150 so far. And Lauren, you flew your behind across the country to be here in person. That night, for anyone who has not seen it, there is plenty of video going on, but the decision, it does seem to be, it appeared, at least watching the meeting, the number of sheriff's deputies who were present, which struck me as odd, knowing how many are usually there, that everything felt like it was a setup against Lauren. And as somebody watching it, before we really kind of get into the meaty details, I am watching whatever footage I can find as it comes out. I don't remember, it was like 10:30 on a Monday night. I don't remember what time it was. I'm like, personally, I will say I am going between crying and clapping for each moment that I'm watching unfold. It was unbelievably heartbreaking and frustrating, but also inspiring. So I want y'all to know that watching it from the outside and being so many hours away, I felt empowered and emboldened by each of you being there and your presence. And I don't remember who said this in our group chat, but it was so well said, was everything up until this point had gone as expected. This moment, what these women did was the disruption. For the first time, y'all did not go along to get along, and you did so publicly. And I want to applaud all of you for that, because it was a beautiful display of strength and solidarity. And feel free to talk about it to whatever extent you feel comfortable. But that moment, as I kind of look at the trajectory of this story, for me, June 9th, and we're now a couple weeks removed from that, really kind of blew this wide open and blew this story open, honestly, to the place it should have been in 2017. And good Lord, at this point in 1977, like we should not still be doing this, but where this story should have been this whole time, I think it's getting to that level. So share, like I said, whatever you're comfortable with about June 9th, and then what has happened in the last week and a half that is kind of bringing us to this current moment.
Elisa, Morgan, interrupt me if I'm forgetting anything, because I feel like one thing I know about trauma recovery is like the brain holds on to some details very clearly because it's like a survival instinct thing. That's the best way I can describe it. And then there are other things that you completely forget about until someone reminds you. So yeah, please let me know if I'm leaving anything out. I also did want to back up just for a second because, you know, I was a staffer too, right? Like I staffed US senators and wore my little J. Crew suits at committee hearings. Like I was a good girl for a long time. I'm the child of some pretty dysfunctional people, and that's not a comment about my mom specifically, in case she's listening to this. That's more extended family, but also like my dad is not he's not well, I'll put it that way. So, you know, I really was like a high performer, overachiever, perfectionist for a long time, big people pleaser. I was put into this role of becoming a disruptor because my own integrity and my own ethics and desire to keep other people safe demanded it. You know, I never wanted to tweet publicly about Thomas Cook back in 2017. I didn't ever want to have to go to the media, but these are the only options. And I think the other survivor would say the same. Like we realized over and over, trying to do things the sort of, you know, behind the scenes way, we weren't getting anywhere. In fact, like we were getting harmed in those processes. So, you know, as I've recovered and like gotten more support. I've just kind of woken up to how bad things are and felt like I had to say something. So in terms of disruption, like I held up a sign during Joe Hogsett's speech last August during the city council meeting. I was like, I'm not going to sit here and just be like a prop for the Democrats on council. Like, yeah, you had this meeting with us, but I'm going to be very clear of what the sign that I made in Elise's office before I went over was 2017 investigation, ? Prove it, because that's what all this hinges on. Joe kept insisting they investigated my case back then. Fisher Phillips says they have proof that they did. I've still never seen it. I was never interviewed. I think it's all bullshit. But, and then, you know, with this meeting at the end of May where the report came out, you know, Elise was also speaking up, but eventually I'm like, can someone put me on speakerphone? Like, so I'm on Elise's phone on FaceTime, also like calling out, like begging Krista or someone on the committee to stop and listen to us. And I keep getting, I don't know what they've been told about me behind the scenes. I suspect that there's a narrative that I'm just some activist and I'm, you know, clout chasing. And oh, by the way, she's a leftist. She's not actually a Democrat. Yeah, like I'm a socialist. I don't care. I own that word. You know, that this is some, I've also heard some people say there's a theory that, you know, I'm just aligned with Jesse Brown and it's like some political like agenda, which I didn't even know him till all this started. So anyway, whatever VOP and the powers that be have needed to say behind the scenes to get people like Jessica McCormick to dismiss me, until recently Krista Carlino to dismiss me, it's worked. But it's starting to not work anymore because I'm telling the truth. And VOP showed himself by having those sheriff's deputies assault me, assault Elise, assault several of the people with us. Maggie Adams McBride got shoved. It's very clear in the video. Morgan, I forget, did a deputy actually push you, or did you get kind of knocked by another person?
I think I got knocked back.
Yeah, which is still not okay, right?
Of
Yeah. Like VOP on the June 9th meeting that you're talking about, though, to get back to that, I know I'm a little bit all over the place, but I think VOP and the powers that be showed themselves. I suspect that, and I'm hearing, you know, nothing I can prove at the moment, but I'm hearing that, yeah, there were extra sheriff's deputies there. There were some who volunteered to be there. If you look at how quickly those deputies escalated and how physical they got right away, with me and with the people who were standing with me, and then the people who got up to try to kind of shield me from that violence, they were ready to go. You know, this was also in the same stretch of days where we saw a U.S. Senator grabbed by law enforcement for trying to confront the Trump administration about ICE. You know, there's just this through line of law enforcement and people who work, whether it's for ICE or these sheriff's deputies or a regular old police force, who are quick to overreact and get violent with people who, in our case, we were just expressing our First Amendment rights. I was trying to speak on the investigation. I got interrupted immediately by Counselor Maggie Lewis. I believe she's the majority leader for Democrats, saying, is this, you know, point of order, is this relevant? And we were like, yes, it is. Like, I'm just trying to talk. I crowdfunded to be here. Like, let me fucking talk. You guys haven't listened to me this far. And then, yeah, VOP interrupted me several times. He called me Ms. Boebert, which I'm assuming it was crazy. Either he Googled me or Googled like Lauren Roberts, Colorado, and mixed me up with her, or he calls me that behind the scenes just to be an asshole. I don't know, but he showed himself for sure. I worked for her opponent, Tricia Calvarese. I worked for the Democrat who ran against her. So it's like, really? Yeah. And just the way those deputies handled us. I mean, Elise, I don't know if you want to get into details of what happened to you. I got grabbed really hard. One kind of pushed my head, pulled my hair. It was really fucked up.
Well, it started even before Lauren went up to speak. You know, there were a ton of them when we walked through security, which I thought was odd. Normally there's one or two when you go through security, and there were like half a dozen. And I was like, huh. And then, you know, we went up to the assembly room, and we signed up to speak, which for the record, you know, one of the interesting things, because one of the greatest tells of people who are not good at politics and just good at following shitty power systems is they say things like, you're politically savvy. You knew they were going to do that and instigate it. And it's like, no, actually, politically savvy people would never do that.
Did someone say that?
Yeah, Ron Gibson said that to a constituent.
Oh, yeah. He's the one who said I should have been
It's publicly out
arrested.
there.
And
Yeah.
he freaked out
For
when I
what?
told, well,
Yeah.
eventually I told one of the deputies to go fuck himself. And he went, ooh, like, what did he say? Like, profanity in the chamber. I'm like,
Yeah. So it's like,
never mind the
the
violence.
greatest tell of people who don't actually know good political strategy is they say things like that. And so what our strategy was that night, which Maggie and Morgan stayed like real heroes, and executed, was we had prepared, because this was all during public comment, mind you. This was all during public comment where the public is supposed to come up and supposed to give their feedback on relevant topics to all the proposals under that portion of the agenda. We had public comment prepared for every single proposal that night, whether it was the new IT upgrades, whether it was DPW expenditures, whether it was this investigation. We had public comment because every single one of those proposals, there are people, there are workers. Those are not just line items. Those are not just policies that are in Word or in fiscal. Those are people that work at the city county building or somewhere in the enterprise, and they deserve to be kept safe. So we went up to sign up, and we were going to speak to that. What we didn't know at that point in time was that there were other people who came to speak about their own experiences with abuse in the enterprise. We didn't even know. They brought family members. It takes a lot of courage to do that. They brought their support team, their circle of care. So back to the sheriff's deputies, I walked up to the podium to sign in, and immediately a sheriff's deputy walks up, puts his hand on the sides of the podium, and I'm like, well, hey, how are you? How's your day? And he's immediately very odd with me. So I'm, in retrospect now, I know what that was, but it just, I've been I sat through 10 years of caucus meetings as a high-level staffer in the Indiana Senate. I know when a caucus makes a decision and then they execute it when they get into a public forum. And that's exactly what that felt like. So when Lauren got up there, and, it was kind of last minute. And I think, Lauren, it was kind of your spidey senses. We had not planned to stand up there with you. I think you were just kind of getting like a real, like, you got nervous. It's a nerve-wracking thing to do. And you looked at us and you said, will you kind of stand up with me?
Yeah.
We're like, sure.
Yeah, because at this point, I naively thought, and actually, it's not naive. I thought there's no way, because we were prepared. We knew they can cut the mic. That's the worst I thought would happen. So that's why I had my phone recording a voice memo the whole time in case I needed the audio later. Thank God, because it kept recording all the way through the assault and as we went outside and while I spoke outside. But I thought, they'll look really bad, but maybe they'll cut the mic. There's no way they're going to have these officers put their hands on a survivor.
We also had volunteers who, if they buzzed you at 2 minutes, they volunteered to read for an additional 2 minutes. And then if it went over, another person would read. So we were like ready to kind of just work with the system.
Mm-hmm.
But the way that Council President Samuel Ossoly escalated that and got so combative right off the bat was just really, honestly shocking, because it's such poor leadership, and poor strategy. This is the first time Lauren had ever been given any type of forum to say anything. And what I texted him that night after I was shoved out and removed from the building, I said, I can't believe you escalated that and you could not hear the righteous anger of a survivor and just listen to it like a leader and used it to build forward. Because that's what I really thought that was the expectation was. And I know now that expectation was far too high. And that's what keeps happening. I'm grieving a lot of expectations right now.
Yeah.
And that is one of them. Because, we stood up there with Lauren, and when he buzzes her, I started to move out of the way because I was like, okay, we're going to get these other two folks to start reading for her. And then things just like got chaotic. All of a sudden there's sheriff's deputies, and I see sheriff's deputies coming for an assault
Multiple.
survivor. Like,
2 of them from the
fuck
front.
off. Hell no. We're not having sheriff's deputies come put their hands on someone who has experienced assault, and certainly not my friend. And then in the meantime, I thought it happened from the backside, and now I fortunately have seen this a million times on camera, which is super awful to have to experience. I all of a sudden felt a sheriff's deputy literally grabbing my boobs, and I don't know what kind of fucking training that is, or a lack of training, but that's not how that's done.
It was disgusting.
And so, and then I'm told to walk like a lady. Like, both of us were told to walk like a lady multiple times, to walk like a lady.
Which I think, by the way, was intended to get a rise out of us. With me, it kind of like verbally got a rise out of me, but I think he was hoping I would physically react so he'd have an excuse to escalate the violence even more.
I mean, it did get a
really
rise
good.
out of me. I told him,
Of course.
don't fucking tell me to act like a lady. And I tried to walk back to the podium, and he grabbed my shirt, and my entire jacket comes off. And, I have a tank top on underneath. I mean, it was just so dehumanizing. And this whole time, it is in front of a group of people who I have been to their weddings. I have been to their bridal showers, their baby showers. I have gone to their fundraisers. I have been to their homes. I have worked to get them elected in full or in individual. And it was just a level of just betrayal, honestly. And unfortunately, it's really, for me, and I don't want to just, derail like the conversation of that night too much, but just to speak to like the damage of what that night has done to me, it has really caused me to be in a period of deep discernment for what it means for me to engage with this party.
Mm-hmm.
Because I respect myself and I love myself, and I am only willing to put myself in places where I feel safe. And I did not hear from a lot of people until I, a week later, wrote an op-ed in the Star and kind of spoke to this. And only then did I hear from certain people. And it wasn't, oh, I'm so sorry, how are you? It was, we need to meet face to face. It's time. Getting called to the principal's office.
That's exactly what it sounds like.
Do you want to call out who that was, Elise?
Yeah, I mean, it was the state Democratic chair. And so I said, I am not putting myself into another situation where I am in a space that's not conducive to my mental or emotional health. Like, I am not going to engage in another meeting. I'm not going to engage into another situation that is, not conducive to my own whole health. And so until folks are ready to have any type of empathy for the situation, it's a non-starter for me, because the way I saw this happening was, wow, okay, this has gone too far. I'm so sorry. Or like, this whole time, I think all we've wanted from the state party is for them to publicly say, we believe survivors. We stand by survivors. We are going to create an environment where they feel safe. And we are sorry for how this has been handled. And all that it has been to this point has been meet with our attorneys. we're going to create an ethics committee. Now that we've created it, why have you not submitted something to the ethics committee that didn't exist when you first came to us?
Which, by the way, no one ever updated me on that. Mike Schmall, the most recent chair, he finally, after I hounded him on social media and through their executive director, I forget Dana's last name. He put her in a terrible spot too, in my opinion. But he finally, I'm just putting my shoe on. If anyone's wondering what I'm doing, they took them off. He finally met with me in December after months of me hounding him publicly, because I just wanted to tell him what the deal was. I was kind of an asshole, but I think rightfully so. I was like, you're welcome. I'm doing you people a favor by telling you. I also got him on the record saying he and Thomas Cook are friends, which explains a lot. I said, I want a public apology. He said, we'll consider it. Didn't hear another word. Blew me off with any follow-up emails. He's on vacation, whatever. He just ran out the clock on his chairmanship. I also said I don't want Tim Moriarty serving even pro bono as the state party's counsel, because he had a role in covering up my case all those years ago. Like, they actually don't give a shit. Like, their actions show that. And like, how hard is it to even just say you're sorry? Like, I don't know. Sorry, I've derailed us, but it makes me so mad.
There is no derailment here. There are, because there are so many facets of that. There are so many different moving parts happening. And to know, Elise, that, and even watching the meeting, because I think the silence from all of these different individuals and entities has been unbelievably startling. When this is happening at the council meeting on June 9th, not a single one of those 9 people is saying anything. Nobody is saying anything. And I'm, Morgan, because you stayed behind. So you and Maggie stayed in the chambers. What happened after they left? Was it just like business as usual? Those crazies are gone. Like, was that kind of the attitude?
Pretty much. A few counselors, Jared Evans, while the assault was taking place, Jared Evans stood up, kind of puffed out his chest a little.
It meant so much to me when I saw that later.
Yeah.
It was like,
someone said they saw Allie Brown turn to President Osley and like, we assume she's like, are you going to do something? Maybe a few others acknowledged what happened and said it was not okay. But largely they all just kind of say, feel it's the same silence that we're hearing now that we heard last summer, right? They all assume they can't do anything. Well, you have a platform and you can at least speak up out against it. So yeah, business as usual. Maggie and I both offered our own public testimony about the culture in the Hogshead administration that, in our opinion, is enabled Thomas Cook to perpetuate this behavior. And then, as Elise mentioned earlier, we gave public testimony on all of the other agenda items. Except for one, because there was one about wetlands being destroyed, and I actually really care about that, and so I didn't want to derail that. It was not a favorable outcome, unfortunately, though.
Unfortunately. And following that meeting, the coverage was pretty extensive from the media, with many outlets kind of covering what happened, what went down. I believe, Morgan, you and Lauren, I think, gave an interview to WFYI where you kind of talked through the events of that evening. The first really public statement from somebody who was in the wrong that night from Osley came out, I believe, 2 days later. I think that was on Wednesday, his apology. How did that strike y'all?
It wasn't an apology. He didn't say sorry or I apologize. It was written clearly by a crisis PR firm. Elise, I believe you texted him. Well, you mentioned you texted him the night it happened. Nothing. He has my number. And let me look up what I actually texted him. After I heard about through the press his statement.
Yes, a very
It's-
carefully crafted statement.
Yeah, like just pick up the phone, dude. What is wrong with these people? I was mad, but I go, you scared to actually apologize to me directly, huh? And then in all caps, I wrote, grow up. Because I keep saying, and you'll see me laughing. It's really gallows humor, but these people are all just like very immature. They're just like little babies who can't just do what most grownups have to do, which is take accountability. And him saying, he said something about listening and learning, I think, in it too, which is like the most overused phrase by anyone with a platform who messes up. And it's like, no, you're still not listening. And I don't think you've learned anything. It's disgusting.
And a week later, so a little over a week later, because the resolution for the $300,000 to finish paying Fisher Phillips it wasn't voted on to be passed that night. It was sent to the committee. So the Administration and Finance Committee of the council met the following Tuesday, and that was very intentionally, at least how it was presented by the committee chair, an opportunity for survivors to come speak. And watching that meeting again was very powerful and very, the National Women's Defense League was there. She shared, I believe, your statement, Lauren, a couple of other survivor statements. One of the survivor statements that she shared stands out to me. And because Elise, I believe it was something you mentioned earlier, how many people were in the council chambers on the 9th who were there to share their stories. And this man brought his family with him. He had a story to share. And after what he witnessed happen to Lauren and Elise and everybody else who was there, he said he was frozen and he was not able to give his statement. And that, to me, that's the culture, again, that is continuing to suppress people's voices and to bully people into silence. That anybody, and I think, Lauren, you've spoken to this, others have spoken to this, who in their right mind would ever watch that meeting and then look at this carefully crafted process, ethics, yada, 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 and say, oh, I'm going to voluntarily put myself through that process now because I see how well it worked for her. And for this man to have this statement prepared and to bring all of these people with him to come support him, and he wasn't able to speak. I was so glad that his statement was read aloud the following Tuesday. And, listening and learning, I believe the camera caught Osley once, maybe. I think I only saw him once or twice sitting there listening. I don't know if anything was learned, but
he wasn't at that finance meeting.
Oh, he wasn't? I thought he was. Oh, that's my mistake. He didn't even show up. So what are you listening to?
Exactly. Who are you listening to? And my guess is it's Dan Parker.
Well, yeah.
Oh, for crying out loud. Well, so the finance...
Two other counselors attended that meeting who are not on the committee. Oh, 4?
Right. Wasn't it?
Okay.
Brianne Delaney, Jessica McCormick, and then there were Jared Evans, and then there was another.
Oh, that's right.
There was somebody else in front. I can't
4.
remember. Well, I'd have to look. I can't remember.
Yeah.
I can't recall either.
And at the end of that meeting, like we were saying earlier about the whole report debacle. So so the report came out May 30th. So we're less than a month out from this. And again, people who know what they are doing strategically, if they're trying to be politically strategic, would have done pretty much the opposite of everything that's been done. I mean, I think it's a really easy strategy to craft at this point. Just do the opposite of what you did before, because it was a terrible move. And so we're less than a month out from that report coming out. And the committee meeting on Tuesday night, where all of these counselors saying, well, we have all of these questions. We have to pay Fisher. Do we have to pay them more money because they're going to bill us by the hour? Like, this $300,000 is not something that they're paying ahead. They have to satisfy the invoice. It's already been sent. So how much more money are we going to throw at a law firm to get questions answered? It felt like, where were all of these questions 6 months ago? Why was nobody asking any of these questions prior to this report, prior to having victims, survivors come forward and just voluntarily re-traumatize themselves to try? Like, where were all of these questions before? I I don't know that we'll ever get an answer to that, but everyone seemed to be going through the motions kind of until June 9th happened. And it was like, oh, this is different than the others. And now we have to act differently.
Isn't it just a report to give them cover for what
Exactly,
everyone
yes.
already wants to do? So
Yeah.
just man up and do it. Say the thing that you think this report is going to help you say. We have it all. We don't need it in this tiny box. Like, that's such a, government. It's such a joke about government. We always need to commission this report to tell us what we're going to do.
No, we
can
already
just
know what to do. We
it.
just really want to spend $500,000 first.
Exactly.
And
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 I
wait a
think-
bunch of paper.
I think the question too is for what or for who?
Yeah.
Why are we doing this to protect Joe Hogsett? Why are we doing this to protect a culture that is from him so he's not going to correct it? Why are we doing this, and assuming that other people can't do this job? I truly believe that the chattering class, the class of people who have this perceived power, is very small. The people who believe that this party can be a force for good, the people who have a great wealth of talent, even though that's diminishing under this culture to the detriment of our city, who are working in this enterprise, is full of good people. But you only rise to the occasion and you rise to the level of the leadership. And right now, we are being failed. We are being failed by the mayor. We are being failed by party leadership. And the people who are around them benefiting from their proximity to power around them. That amount of people is actually very small. Valerie Kaur, she's a Sikh woman. She's an activist. She's a poet. She's an incredible leader. She always says, we are the majority and we have to act like one. This is that moment. We are the majority and we have to act like one. Because I have not heard from people in necessarily ranks of perceived power in this party, but I have heard from many, 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 many people who give a shit in this state and who actually are the people doing the work in the city, who actually are doing the work in the party. Those are the people who actually have the power.
Mm-hmm.
So it's time for the people who are the real majority in this party and in this city enterprise to use that power and leverage it, to reach out to their elected officials, to reach out to the party and demand what they know is right and good.
Thank you so much for being here for part 3. Part 4, the conclusion of our 2-hour interview, will be available on Friday, July 5th. If you want early access to part 4, become a paid subscriber on my Substack and you'll get it directly to your inbox.